Hey boys and girls, this is Iron Wings 3187 coming at you with another episode of Iron Wing Reviews. I hope you'll excuse how crowded my review space is, my usual workbench, as I've been reloading some 7.62x39 due to the steel-cased ammo I usually use being in short supply in my area thanks to the recent presidential decree. So this special today, this review is going to be quite special as I'm celebrating the 101 subscriber mark I reached earlier last week. I'm currently sitting at 115 subscribers, so this is a little bit delayed, but unfortunately you have to take the opportunity where you get. So what I thought I'd go ahead and do for my 101 subscriber mark is I would go ahead and open up one of these crates of MREs I currently have. I have a friend who works on a nearby Marine base, and when the rotations come through of soldiers, they'll often toss out or just leave behind the MREs they don't use, and they'll often wind up in a dumpster, and since he's in charge of clearing out the local areas, what he'll go ahead and do is he'll take them to the Army surplus store and sell them. But he offered me a whole bunch of them, and he, every time someone comes through, offers to sell me a couple of crates for about 40 bucks a piece. So I thought I'd go ahead and crack one of these open. I haven't opened an MRE crate since 2015, so about 5 or 6 years, and I want to see how the menus have changed. Now, this is a crate B, which means it's meals 13 through 24, I think. Don't quote me on that. And what I'm going to go ahead and do, I've already cut the bands and I've cut this packaging open so that I can kind of try and get a decent access to these menus without having to fight it on screen and on camera. What I'm going to go ahead and do is put this down by my feet, pull each one out on its own individually, and we will go ahead and go over what all they are. And I believe, let me check the bottom of this box. Okay, yeah, this is a 2019 production MRE, so this is less than a year old. So it'll be interesting, well, it's about 3 years old, my apologies. So we'll go ahead and we'll go through, we'll look and see what they have for menus now since I left the Army and what's changed. I'm kind of excited because I do distinctly remember the MRE menus kind of getting old after a while, and them not being very interesting in terms of a flavor profile. So first one out of the box that I can see here is going to be Mexican-style chicken stew. Now I have not heard about this one. I'm guessing this is a more recent addition to the menu. Keep in mind I'm not opening up any of these bags because these are emergency rations for me. They're kind of just a last-minute resort because I do live in a desert. I want something I'm able to grab and keep myself fed for a while. I mean, granted my weight, but... So the Mexican-style chicken stew, I'm kind of interested to see what it'll be like. I wonder if it's going to be like chicken tortilla stew or soup, but I'm not too sure. That's menu 15. Then after that we have menu 22, beef goulash, which is beef with brown rice, spinach, carrots, tomatoes, and smoked paprika. This actually sounds pretty interesting because it kind of reminds me of a lot of, if I have a lot of viewers that have seen it, Steve MRE 1998, I think is his name. He does a lot of the European rations for their armed forces, and this kind of reminds me of something you get out of like a Hungarian or Eastern European meal. An old standby, this one I do remember from the time I was in the U.S. Army. Tuna chunk light water-packed lemon tuna. And this one I distinctly remember as being one of the least popular MREs you could get at the time because it's not so much it had a really bad flavor to it like the Vomlet or the vegetarian lasagna, those sort of things. From what I recall, the flavor isn't that bad, it's just bland because it's lemon pepper tuna, a pouch of it, with nothing else. No mayo, no relish, no nothing. You can't even make a decent chicken salad out of it or a tuna salad. It's just bland tuna with a couple of tortillas and I think it's a pound cake in there. So it's a high protein meal, but there's not a lot of good to it in terms of flavor. So it wasn't exactly popular, but it wasn't hated either, if that makes sense. Where it's kind of one of those middlemen where you'll eat it if there's no other choice, but you aren't thrilled about going after it. After that we have Southwest beans and black beans. Southwest beef and black beans, my apologies. So this one was 15, this is 22, this is 12, or 20, okay, that's 21. This is 24. So this is supposedly the last meal that they added. I guess this is the most recent, I think. And it's actually a pretty hefty package, so I'm guessing this is probably going to be like a chili-based sauce with beef and black beans. So it probably comes with a couple of tortillas, some jalapeno cheese spread, probably something similar to what used to be the old, God, I can't even remember, but there was a burrito style one that used to be in the A menus, I think, and it was kind of similar to that. Next up, another old standby, menu 13. This is another one that was in while I was still in. This is a vegetarian meal. The cheese tortellini and tomato sauce. Now, I am pretty sure they're never going to be getting rid of this meal just because cheese tortellini and tomato sauce is impossible to mess up. It's purely vegetarian. There's not a lot of stuff you have to put into it. It's just simple and reliable and cheap. So this is one of the more popular ones from what I remember. A lot of people really like the cheese tortellini because it had a good flavor, it was pretty sweet, and because it was vegetarian at the time I was in, the only way you would ever get guaranteed something sweet like candy or a Ranger bar was if you got a vegetarian meal. Then after that we have beef ravioli in a meat sauce. This one is another standby, of course. 13, 21, and now 18. These are old menus that I did eat while I was in the U.S. Army. Out of the three we've had so far, I would probably have to say the cheese tortellini was my favorite because the beef ravioli is basically just a Chef Boyardee in a Mylar pack. And it isn't that bad. It isn't that good. It's kind of just, it is what it is. It's beef ravioli. And in a situation where you're not able to eat anything, this will be a great this will be a godsend. But it has, from what I remember, a wheat snack bread in it, which is still just the most god-awful doughy thing you can ever have. It has cheese spread, which I despise. I prefer the chunky peanut butter or peanut butter. From what I remember, they recently in like 2018 switched it to every MRE getting something like candy or sweet in it. I also remember these not having candy in it. I remember them having like the pound cake, lemon poppy seed pound cake or something, which was a real like contradiction in flavors because you got something that's like savory, tomatoey, beefy, and instead of giving you something like a garlic bread, they give you a wheat snack bread and a lemon poppy seed pound cake, which I never quite got. Next one I pull out. Mind these are all random, so let's see what this one is. Menu item 23, pizza slice pepperoni. Now this I do remember hearing a whole lot about back a couple of years ago. Basically what I remember hearing is this is basically like a high school cafeteria pizza that's been dehydrated, and there's all sorts of contradictions I heard back in the day when I was in. This was like introduced at the very end of my time in the Army, and there were rumors it was coming around. We all had old MRE, so no one ever got to eat it. But there was rumors like you were supposed to cut the corner of the Mylar pouch open when you put it in the heater bag to let the steam rehydrate the pizza. There was all sorts of weird stuff that got spread around. And I remember them saying this is actually supposed to be really good, but really hard to find because apparently they basically got stolen like crazy. People would open the MRE crate, steal these out, and replace it with something else because there was never a guaranteed shot that this was going to be sticking around. So every time I try to do a YouTube video, there's a goddamn train that drives by. I don't know what it is. Alright. As I said, this is supposed to be a fairly good one. I don't know what the menu items are in it. I just remember that it's supposed to be similar to a high school cafeteria pizza, those little old square ones. And it's supposed to be a fairly good meal. They introduced it originally, I think, in the 90s, and it had a lot of oxidation problems because of the sauce being so moist. And basically, the package it was in, if it got dark, hot, the moisture would gather up in the bag and it would start growing mold or oxidizing. So I could misremember that, but that's just what I heard. Next up, creamy spinach fettuccine. Now, this one I do know about. This one was on MRE Steve's channel, he ate one of these, and he basically said it was the worst modern MRE menu because there's no texture to it. It's basically a fettuccine sauce, a creamy spinach sauce with fettuccine noodles. It's mush on mush on mush. He crumbled up cheddar cheese pretzels combos, I think, into it, and the crackers you get from the MRE as usual into it, and it just sopped up everything, and it turned everything to mush. So I'm not really looking forward to this one, but I know that in a life-saving emergency, I know for sure this is going to be a good alternative to sitting there and having to eat like guinea pigs or rats. Next menu item, beef patty jalapeno pepper jack. So this one is another new one that I didn't have while I was in the Army. I'm kind of curious to see how this one would be because it kind of, to me, sounds like they wanted to put a cheeseburger into a MRE. And there are some ingenious like recipes soldiers have come up with MREs where they've made their own meatball subs, they've made hamburgers, all sorts of crazy things with MREs. I remember there was one guy who made his own MRE pizza, not through this menu item, but by taking like wheat snack bread, the sauce from the ravioli meat sauce, and cheddar cheese spread, and putting it out on a truck bed, if I remember correctly, like Humvee hood. And since we were in Kentucky in the summer, it got baking hot out there. From what I remember, he said it wasn't that bad. Of course, I'm not going to taste it, but yeah, there was all sorts of crazy things people did with MREs, and this kind of sounds to me like someone wanted to make a jalapeno cheeseburger into a MRE. And if that's the case, that sounds fairly interesting. I'm going to have to look into this one to see because I'm already not a big pepper jack fan, but I do kind of like jalapenos, so I'm curious to see what's in this one and how it's going to taste. Then we have, oh man, I was hoping we would be able to avoid this. I have opened and field stripped a box of MREs for emergency supplies for like my emergency kit. And in my menu A, there was no breakfast items at all. But it appears we can't escape from a breakfast when it comes to MREs totally. The pork sausage patty maple flavoring. Now this was actually, I will admit, the least horrible of all the breakfast menu items. From what I remember, it was biscuits and gravy, the omelet. There was a whole host of terrible breakfast menus, least of which was this one. This one was actually fairly decent. It's just not much to it. It's literally just a pork sausage patty and some maple syrup flavoring. It's not great, but if you're awake at 4 in the morning getting ready to do a 12-mile ruck march, miserable as can be, it's better this than nothing at all. Unless you got a canteen full of Jack and Coke, in which case, there you go. And yes, that did happen in my unit. A couple of soldiers got busted on a ruck march with a canteen full of Jack and Coke. The last two menu items we got in here, if we can get them out. We've got your basic chicken burrito bowl. This one is another recent one. This one was I think, the last recent addition to MREs I had before I left the U.S. Army. This one was added very shortly before I left, and I had one, and it wasn't terrible. I just remember it being really bland because of the rice that's in it. Other than that, I remember it being fairly decent because of any MRE that has tortillas in it instead of that god-awful wheat snack bread tastes pretty decent. But yeah, there wasn't a whole lot that stood out to me. So the final one, hash brown potatoes with bacon, peppers, and onions. Now this one is pretty interesting. This is another breakfast one, obviously. Hash brown peppers, bacon, peppers, and onions. I'm kind of curious how they pull this off because it's either, in my mind, going to be really watery or it's going to be really oily. Because hash browns, if you've had them in any diner, it's really crispy, really crunchy, but that doesn't mix well with an MRE because of the way it's heated up in the water. Every one of these MREs has some kind of sauce, liquid, something like that that'll help retain the heat and keep the meal moist over long periods of time. So that tells me this is either going to be really greasy or really watery. But given that it's bacon, peppers, and onions, it might actually have a decent flavor despite that. But I'm kind of hesitant because if there's one thing that's just horrible, it's soggy potatoes. There's a reason why no one likes reheated french fries the next day unless you pop them in an air fryer. So I am genuinely curious about this one too. So now that I've opened up and pulled out all of these MREs, I'm going to do a top 5 of the most recent. I'm going to eliminate them one by one and tell you the reasons why. So the last one, the absolute last meal out of this that I would probably eat is not going to be a surprise. The creamy spinach fettuccine, because to me, I've seen this in action. I've seen Steve MRE eat one, and he basically shows that it is nothing but mush. There's no texture to it. There's no crunch. There's no nothing. So that's going to be the absolute last. Which one would I eliminate next? Again, probably not going to be a surprise. It would have to be the lemon pepper tuna. Just because, again, this is very bland. There's not a lot going on in it. The taste of it is just there. There's nothing special about it. It will get you through. It's going to give you protein for a long fight or a long walk. It's reliable, but there are better options. So that one's going. After that, I would probably have to go with the pork maple sausage patty. Just because, to me, this is a breakfast item, and breakfast is usually your absolute last resort, especially this one because of the horrible artificial maple flavoring to it. Next, burrito. It's probably a toss-up. It's either going to be the chicken burrito bowl or the Mexican-style chicken stew, because to me, I don't know anything about this one, and if I don't know anything about it, I don't want to pick it and be stuck with something I absolutely hate and just have to force down my throat. You know, I don't want to have to fork down and choke down. And then the chicken burrito bowl, the reason why these are both going probably at the same time in our tie is because this one, much like the lemon pepper tuna, there's just not a lot that makes this one stand out. There's not a lot of flavor to it, a lot good to it, you know? After that, we're down to 7. So there's 2 more that need to go before I can officially start my top 5. And honestly, I think next it's going to be the Southwest beef and black beans, because to me, this is probably just going to be like another taco bowl or something like that. And if that's the case, I'd rather go with something a little more trustworthy to me, a little more faithful than something I don't really know. Same thing as the Mexican-style chicken stew. Could be good, but since I haven't had it before, I really wouldn't know. So now we're down to 6. Which one's going to go next? And again, I'm surprised it's kind of made it up to this far, but to me, it seems like it's a good, appealing idea. The beef patty with jalapeno pepper jack. Because to me, if this is what I think it is, where it comes with like a beef patty, some pepper jack cheese, like a string of it, or it's in a sauce like that, all you need is a wheat snack bread, a couple of packets of mustard from like the PX that you brought with your range pack or your rucksack, and this would probably be a pretty good cheeseburger substitute in the field. But at the same time, I really have to be in a specific mood for the jalapeno thing and the pepper jack cheese. But still, it's my number 6 spot just because I think this would probably be one of the best MRE meals in terms of flavor and uniqueness. So now we're at my top 5. Which one would be number 5, the one that I would probably call my least favorite out of the best? For me, that would probably be the hash brown potatoes with bacon, peppers, and onions. Now this one, despite my negative thoughts on it, the fact that I think it's going to be really watery or greasy, I'd probably give this one a shot just because, to me, I love hash browns. And this, to me, seems like a lot more of an interesting breakfast concept than a sausage patty. Would it probably be anywhere near the top if we had better alternatives than, you know, frickin' lemon pepper tuna? Probably not, but still, I think this would probably be the best menu item I've heard of if it turns out decent. If it's really watery, really greasy, we'll see. Eventually I'll have to open these up and eat them because they only have a shelf life of like 5 to 7 years if they're kept well. For number 4, I'm going to have to go with the cheese tortellini here. Now, I like the cheese tortellini. This was one of my favorite go-tos in the Army, but one thing I do distinctly remember, despite liking it, is the fact that it got really bland like the 5th time you ate it. This was one of the ones that everyone went after, and I was usually pretty lucky and managed to grab it because of my I used to be a practicing SDA in the Army, Seventh-day Adventist. So I usually got at least one vegetarian meal a week. And after 5 or 6 weeks, you just get really tired of these because when you're basic training and even in the regular Army, you don't have really the time to heat these up. Heating them up is kind of a luxury, so more often than not, you eat them cold, and these things cold are just so bland. You don't really get the sweetness of the tomato sauce. You don't really get the good flavor of the cheese tortellini when it's hot. It's just meh. But when you have the time to heat it up, this has got to be one of the better ones, which is why it's not going to take the top spot out of these, but it's still going to have an honorable mention in probably the 4th spot because it's really good. It's just not great over a long period of time. So we're down to my top 3. And this is kind of interesting because the 3 I have here are kind of the 3 that I didn't really recommend. The beef goulash, the beef ravioli, and the pepperoni pizza slice. And you might be thinking, well, why is it you chose these then? And I'll kind of explain my logic and which one's going to go next. So the next one I think is going to be the beef ravioli. Again, this is a good stand-in. I really think it's a decent meal, especially with the amount of carbs, proteins. Everything that's in this one is going to be really good for like long-term and short-term energy gain. But the fact that it comes with a wheat snack bread instead of like a garlic bread in it, it comes with jalapeno cheese spread or just cheese spread, and the fact that it comes with like a lemon poppy seed pound cake instead of something else like candy has to knock it out of the top 2, just because to me the main meal is good, but all the sides just don't really make sense for this one particular meal. And even then, the main meal itself is just kind of meh. The whole combination together that's the reason why I think it made it to as far as it did, is because as a meal as a whole, this is really good for getting your energy back. This is really good for getting your morale up because it kind of reminds you of when you were a kid. But overall, if you pick apart everything in this meal on its own, it's really not that great of a meal. So yes, it's in my top 3 because I think this would be really good if you were to take this as a whole, stuff it as an emergency meal. Say you're going out on a 24-mile ruck march and all of a sudden you guys are stuck because of weather or something. This is probably the best thing you can have on you. And these 2. Number 2, I'm probably going to have to give the pepperoni pizza slice to me because I haven't tried it yet. It's not tried and true because it's more recent, but the concept alone gives it a cool factor. And on top of that, having pepperoni pizza in an MRE gives you such a mental boost. It's such a morale thing. If you want your soldier spirit, if he's down on his luck and he's feeling like pissed because he had a bad day at work, he's got lunch but he's broke, he can't go to lunch because he's broke and he doesn't have access to like the DFAC, this is probably the best thing you can give him. It'll probably cheer him up right away because hey, it's pizza. It may be from an MRE, but it's still pizza. And it's got pepperoni too on that. So to me, I haven't tasted the flavor, but to me, just being the fact that it's a morale booster and something that's really cool adds to the fact that it should be in my number 1 or number 2 spot. And for number 1, actually, I'm really surprised at this. I'd have to go with my beef goulash here. To me, the beef with brown rice, spinach, carrots, tomatoes, and smoked paprika. I'm not the biggest paprika fan, but all those items together, beef, brown rice, spinach, carrots, and tomatoes, all that combined tells me this is a really good high energy meal. This is something where if you haven't had anything to eat for 2 days because you've been out stranded from a patrol, your vehicle got destroyed and you have nothing else to eat, this main course meal, if you were to whip this out and just start eating it, you're going to get a lot of energy back from it because you got the carbs from the brown rice, the proteins from the beef, you've got your fiber and from the tomatoes, the spinach, the carrots. This just seems like a perfect all-around MRE meal. And I am amazed something like this wasn't in while I was in the service, because something this complex, something this well made in terms of ingredients, combination, just kind of amazes me, because something like this would give your soldiers a lot better metabolism and a lot better energy efficiency than just a pork maple patty. So that's kind of, to me, why this is going to be number one for the MREs out of this box. Not because it's going to be the best flavor, not because it's the best combination of items. I don't even know what combination of items are in here. I just know that, to me, if you want energy, you want something that's going to give you a lot of long-term sustainability out of this MRE box, this is probably going to be your best option for all the combination of different ingredients it has. So, with that out of the way, I'm IronWings3187, guys. I appreciate the 101 of you, now 115 of you who have subscribed to me, given my content a listen. And I know my voice isn't the easiest to listen to, let's be honest. I started this channel 10 months ago with the concept of reviewing a few knives, talking about a few experiences I've had in life, and I never really thought it would go this far. I'm amazed at how far I have gone on this platform, and I really do appreciate all you guys. With that out of the way, as I said, this has been IronWings3187. Thanks for watching.